What if I told you that there is a country in Latin America more developed than the average European country, but at the same time you can live in a nice house in a fancy area for less than $1,000 and have a nice dinner in a luxurious restaurant for $30. And don't forget the swimming pool, tennis courts, and golf course available to you. All that is possible and within reach for you in the places we will reveal today. These countries will allow you to do something we call cost of living geoarbitrage. Mark this expression because this has been an increasing trend since 2021 and it will gain force in the next few years. It happens when countries experience sudden devaluations of their currencies. So if you earn your income in dollars or euros, everything becomes magically cheaper. To live in these places is an easy way to end up with more disposable income than you ever had in your life. So grab your cup of coffee and get ready to discover the best Latin American countries to live in. To rank these countries, you use three criteria. First, the Human Development Index, or HDI. The HDI is a measure that assesses the overall well-being of a country's people. It considers factors like education, health, and income. The higher, the better. The second factor we consider is the safety. Everyone knows that there are some really violent places in Latin America. So we consider safety and homicide indicators exactly to filter out countries like Colombia or Nicaragua. The third factor is the Living Cost Index, as measured by Numbeo and Expat. The Living Cost Index is a measure of how expensive it is to live in a particular place. The US has a cost of living index of 73. So if a country has an index of 36.5, it has on average only half of the cost of living in the US. Now that you know all the criteria, time to start our top 8. In the 8th place, El Salvador. Until a few years ago, El Salvador was a very dangerous place. In fact, the most dangerous in the world. In the last few years, it had a dramatic transformation and became the safest country in the continent. You heard it right. El Salvador today has an homicide rate of only 2.4 in 2023. This is the same homicide rate of the European continent. To put into perspective, the homicide rate of the US is 6.8, and it's increasing year after year. The cost of living index there is also very low, only 29.6, meaning that on average, life costs less than half of what you would pay in the US. Despite recent improvements, the Human Development Index, HDI, in El Salvador is still quite low, only 0.674, so it's below the other countries on this list. In 7th place is Costa Rica. With an HDI of 0.81, Costa Rica has a development level similar to Thailand or the Bahamas. If you watched our other videos, probably noticed that Costa Rica figures among the best on a lot of lists. It receives millions of tourists and has some of the most well-preserved natural landscapes in the entire world. It was in our ranking of the best countries to retire to and is also one of the best Spanish-speaking countries to visit. The link to both of those videos I will put in the comment section. The cost of living index is 36, meaning that Costa Rica has a cost of living that is half of the United States. The only issue with Costa Rica is that it is slightly more violent than what one would expect. The homicide rate there is 12.8, which is twice the value of the US. In 60th place is Peru. The South American country has become an increasingly attractive destination for expats. The HDI of Peru is relatively low, only 0.76. Similar to countries like Brazil or Azerbaijan. The cost of living index, however, is absurdly low, only 20.8. That means living in the US costs you 3.5 times more than living in Peru. The homicide rate there is 5.7, which is less than in the US. In 50th place is a country that I'm sure you expect to be in this ranking, Panama. Panama is very well known for its low taxes, good infrastructure, it has one of the best subway systems in the entire Latin American continent, an airport that offers flights to almost anywhere in the world. But it's more than that. It's one of the most developed countries in the region, with an HDI of 0.82. The homicide rate there is 11.3, which is a bit on the higher side, but to put it into perspective, this is less than the homicide rate in cities like Buffalo, New York, Las Vegas, or Philadelphia. The cost of living index in Panama is 35, meaning less than half of the average cost of living in the US. In 4th place is Paraguay. And I love to talk about Paraguay exactly because nobody talks about Paraguay as much as they deserve to be talked about. I have been there, it's a lovely place, maybe a bit too humid to be honest, and their economy is growing at an impressive pace. The homicide rate in Paraguay is 7, which is very similar to the average of the US. Their HDI is only 0.73, but the cost of living index there is 19.5. This is the second lowest value of this rating. On average, what we spend an entire year in Paraguay is less than what we spend in 2 months and a half in the US. It's extremely cheap. Look at this gigantic mansion in colonial style. It has 501 square meters or 5,400 square feet of constructed area and costs only $1,600 per month. I even don't know what to do with 501 square meters. A billiard room? What do people do with such enormous space? Tell me in the comment section because I'm curious. In third place is Bolivia. Now here is a warning. Nearly anywhere in Bolivia, the altitude is very high. Imagine the altitude of Colorado and then multiply it by 2. So it's not for the faint. There are also frequent political turmoils and the HDI is only 0.7. So why Bolivia is still in this ranking? Because Bolivia is even cheaper to live in than Paraguay. The cost of living index there is only 18.4. This palace with 600 square meters, located in the Bolivian capital, La Paz, costs only $2,500 per month. In some cities in California, $2,500 pay for a studio infested by bedbugs. And in Bolivia you have this James Bond style mansion. The homicide rate there is also quite low, only 4. This is way lower than the US and comparable to some European countries. And now let's go for the top 2. However, before we go for the second place, I would like to ask for a small favor. If you enjoyed this episode, please hit the like and subscribe buttons. In the second place is Argentina. The economy of Argentina has been struggling for already a few decades. Their devaluated currency also caused a major brain drain, forcing many educated Argentinians to move out of the country to earn in stronger currencies. But the same devaluation also made their costs ridiculously low for a country with a high HDI of 0.85. Yes, Argentina has an HDI similar to European countries like Hungary or Slovakia. Their homicide rate is 4.6, much lower than the US. But the best part is the low living costs, if your income is in dollars or euros. The cost of living index in Argentina is only 27.8, and it could be even lower if you consider a smaller city instead of the larger and more expensive Buenos Aires. For example, this large house in a painfully beautiful city called Mendoza, surrounded by wineries and mountains, costs only $1,400 per month to rent. Now, ready for the first place? Can you guess it? If you ever visited this country, I bet you know which place I'm talking about. Drum roll, it's Chile. Almost everyone expected Chile to top this list of the best Latin American countries to live in. The surprising part is that today some people may say that Argentina or Uruguay are better, while until a few years ago, Chile would be the questionable first place. The truth is that the last 5 years were not the best for Chile, and their advantage over the rest of the continent reduced drastically. When I lived there 11 years ago, it was a splendid and very safe country. Santiago has an excellent public transportation system and an infrastructure that also offers every kind of amenity you could expect from developed countries. Today things are a bit worse than a few years ago, but it is still the safest and most developed country in Latin America. Their HDI is 0.86. Comparable to European countries like San Marino or Portugal. The cost of living index there is 26.4, which is remarkably low for such a level of development. Chile is still very safe, but is getting a bit worse lately. The homicide rate in Chile right now is 6.7, a number similar to the US. In 2012, it was only 2.5, so since then it got a lot worse. I live in Santiago, and despite being a larger city, it was quite safe, especially on the eastern side of the city. Honestly, I saw no difference between living there in Chile and Europe, except for the fact that the climate was better and the wine was good and cheaper. Now, do you want to know another place that has good wine, low living costs, and one of the best climates in the world? Check our ranking of the best places to live and retire in Portugal by clicking this video here at your left.